Man, you could really be sued for anything. Absolutely, positively anything. Here comes the DOJ, the Department of Justice, which, as you know, is totally trustworthy. And they are suing the state of Virginia, or they'll call themselves the Commonwealth of Virginia. And the lawsuit is based on the idea that Virginia is taking non-citizens off the voter rolls too close to the election. I can't make that up. Tony Katz today. Great to be with you. William Jacobson joins us right now, Cornell law professor, the mind behind LegalInsurrection.com, and he's been pretty busy over there with something called EPP or equalprotect.org. We will talk about it, but first, this from the DOJ going after Virginia. They're arguing that there's a time frame conversation involved here. This something you can sue over?
Well, there is a federal law, so I've read the complaint, that requires that any state programs to systematically remove voters from the rolls, and that's the key thing, must be completed at least 90 days before an election to give people who believe they were, wrongfully removed a chance to remedy it, to not cause confusion. So what DOJ is claiming is that the program that Virginia is doing to remove non-citizens comes too close to the election. So there does seem to be some basis for it, but it's not clear to me from reading the complaint and reading the statute that what Virginia is doing is actually violating that law, because the only thing they are doing is removing people who have checked a box on their license registration form with motor vehicles saying they are not a citizen. Okay, so they're not like just going out and trying to uncover who's not a citizen. It's a very narrow sort of program that if you have checked a box that says you're not a citizen when you registered with motor vehicles, then they will cross-reference that with the voter rolls. And what Youngkin has said is that the local election officials have to continue to do that. So I don't know if that is systematically removing voters. I don't know if it falls under it, but people need to understand we're talking about a very narrow class of people who have already, in their own handwriting or on the computer, have indicated they're not a citizen. And they're just cross-referencing those lists with the local election voter list to make sure that nobody who checked the box at motor vehicle that they're not a citizen then goes and votes as a citizen. So that's what we're talking about. We're also talking about relatively small numbers. According to the complaint, as of September, I think you have 60 or 70 people who fall under that. Now, Virginia's been doing this for years. This is I forget the year, but it's an old statute in Virginia signed by Tim Kaine, the Democrat governor. So already over 6,000 people have been removed from the voter rolls. We're talking about a relatively small group, but that raises the question, why are they doing this?
It raises the question, why is the DOJ going after them? Absolutely. Talking to William Jacobson, Cornell law professor, LegalInsurrection.com. Even if we were to argue that there is a case here, that would be one thing. But it seems that the DOJ spends its time still engaging in the politics, as we have seen via the FBI and others. This is not something that you haven't spoken about or written about at LegalInsurrection.com on particular pieces. And this leads really to what kind of person we see in Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. As a matter of course, how much does the AG really get to set the policy of the DOJ and the types of cases that they focus on?
My guess is a case like this, which they would have known was going to be high profile and get a lot of attention, had to be approved at senior levels. Whether the AG himself got involved, I would tend to think yes, that he would have been aware just because of the nature of it. But if not, this is not some, line officer in DOJ local office deciding to challenge Virginia. The one thing that I found very curious about the lawsuit is, despite the kind of hair on fire rhetoric, they didn't seek a preliminary injunction. They didn't seek a temporary restraining order, at least not yet. I don't know that maybe they'll do it Tuesday, but at least not yet. And if you would think if this was such a serious violation that they would have sought some sort of emergency relief, my God, we could have dozens of people who are unlawfully excluded from voting. We need to stop this judge right away. They didn't do that. They just filed a plain old complaint. Again, that's not to say Tuesday morning they won't file something new, but I did check the docket an hour ago because I knew I was going to be on your show, and there's nothing filed as of an hour ago indicating they're seeking any sort of emergency relief. So I'm not really sure why they're doing it, but there does seem to be some colorable, legal term, colorable basis for them to do it, but it's not clear to me that this program to cross-check the motor vehicle records with the voter records is the sort of systematic, that's the term the statute uses, systematic program to remove voters from the rolls. That, I guess, the court will have to determine.
Talking to William Jacobson, Cornell law professor, LegalInsurrection.com, and also equalprotect.org, a site you have to go to. The Equal Protection Project is what it's called, devoted to the fair treatment of all persons without regard to race or ethnicity. And very often, sir, you find yourself dealing with universities that are engaged in a level of outright bigotry that they would consider to be part of diversity or equity or inclusion. And what it usually means is the exclusion of a group of people, either based on color of skin or religion or sex, because they're trying to provide for one group and not another group, whether it be in education or dollars or what have you. You have 20 different wins in this regard, and the latest is at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and also one in the University of Virginia. What have these cases, what have you been following here or seeing here? How did they come to your attention, and what has been the result?
Well, they come to our attention many different ways. I'd say most of them come to our attention through some form of tip. We have a contact form, and people can leave a message that they see a program that they think might run afoul. But almost all of these, we filed, I think, 44 of them now. Almost all of them involve discrimination against whites and Asians and against men. It's unusual. We've only found one or two where the discrimination was against non-whites, and we challenge those also. So we'll challenge anything. But the reality is that they're almost always against whites and against whites and Asians and against men. So the one we just challenged at University of Virginia was a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color mentoring program. So BIPOC students could apply for this mentoring program to be mentored by BIPOC alumni. And it was only open to non-whites. That's essentially what BIPOC means. It's a fancy acronym for non-white. And we challenged that, and they immediately changed the wording on the website after we went public with it. Whether they live up to it is something we're going to have to monitor. That's always the concern, that people just change the wording but keep doing the same thing. But at least they did change the wording on it. Same with University of Wisconsin-Madison. I forget exactly what that program was, but it was another BIPOC program that we challenged. Not DOJ, Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education, opened a formal investigation based on our challenge, and it was resolved by them changing the name. They took BIPOC out of the name, and they changed the eligibility and indicate that it's now open to everybody. Another one of those sort of mentoring sort of programs. We had a similar one at University of Arkansas, which was being held in conjunction with Walmart. Another sort of career-oriented program only open to BIPOC. So that's the latest trend, is to, have BIPOC only, programs. Sometimes they combine it with sex discrimination too. So you sometimes see programs only open to non-white females, that sort of thing. And we've challenged those on both race and sex discrimination. People need to understand this whole BIPOC mania has really swept the campuses, and it's really a devious sort of poisonous remedy which separates the world into whites and non-whites and provides educational access on that basis, which is completely illegal. The schools know it, but they do it anyway.
They certainly do, and they certainly know it's illegal, and they keep getting hit by people like you and others, but they keep doing it. So I guess the question is, you can keep challenging the programs, and you should, and people should be supportive of Equal Protection Project, equalprotect.org. Is there a moment of breakthrough where you actually get to the university leadership and they change?
That's going to require, depending on whether it's a state school or not, political pressure. In some states, they are under that pressure. I mean, the programs are not only contrary to federal law, but they're contrary to state law in a place like Arkansas, which has banned these sort of DEI programs. So that's the only way. But I don't know how we get through to the senior leadership, to the president of the university, to the board of trustees of the university. They don't, it's not something we really address to them, but they have to be aware of it. One of the strategies that we use is when we file these, we will always make sure to get plenty of publicity about it. And I think it's really the publicity that forces them to change. It's not our complaint. It's really the publicity generated by our complaint, because we're essentially naming and shaming the university. And we only bring it when we have a very strong case where they've clearly discriminated. These are not gray area cases that we bring. They really are, excuse the pun, black and white cases in terms of legality. And so more than half of the schools, or approximately half, will back down when confronted with it, because what they're doing is indefensible. They have no excuse for excluding whites from a program, or excluding blacks from a program, or excluding Asians from a program.
But they come back with another program, right? Is it that when they get confronted by Equal Protect, do they stop, or do they only stop for a while, and therefore we have to stay on them through groups like yours, like Equal Protection Project and others?
Yeah, I mean, the racialization of education is so deeply embedded ideologically on the campuses that it's going to require continued surveillance and continued monitoring. We can stop a program, they can change the program. Of course, we don't know what they do behind closed doors. Right. They may still be discriminating. And that's the problem even with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. A lot of the colleges are just figuring out ways around it. And people need to understand how this poisonous racialized ideology has captured the campuses, not just at Harvard or Yale or someplace like that, but at University of Arkansas, at University of Virginia, at schools in red states, public universities, private. The education system has been institutionally captured by racialized education ideology.
William Jacobson, Cornell law professor, LegalInsurrection.com. That's where you find everything, and you'll learn about equalprotect.org. Check it out there. William, always a pleasure to be with you. More coming your way. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today.